Hello and welcome to Full Steam Ahead, a series in which I attempt to play every game sitting in my Steam library. Now, that feat sounds too absurd, which is correct, as I have approximately 500 games in my games list. Therefore, this series is not necessarily a completionist series. I allot 3 to 5 hours for every game I play, and I make my judgments on the game based on that. Some games I finish within that time frame, and others, maybe like an 80-hour RPG, I can't realistically do. Some games I may have played or heard before, but most of them I'm going in completely blind. It's best not to consider these videos as reviews, more so as highlights and opinions of certain games. With that out of the way, full steam ahead everybody, and on to The Cat Lady. The Cat Lady is a game I know extremely little about. I saw Jordan Underneath's video on the topic, watched it for about 3 minutes, and I knew it was something that I wanted to play. Click on the screen if you want to watch it, it's a fantastic video, trust me. I knew it was a game I'd be interested in just based on the premise, and thankfully, by sheer luck, it was on my Steam library. Now, I know in the intro I made a rule that I only had a max of 5 hours to play a game, but I finished all of The Cat Lady in over that time. In my defense, however, at the 5-hour mark, I was already very close to the end. Like, 40 minutes away from the end. I figured there'd be no point in me not finishing it up, so I know this is my second video and I've already broken a couple of my rules, so sorry. So because of this, there'll be full spoilers for the entire game. If you like what you see from early parts of the game, then I would recommend you buy it. As I go through the game, I will discuss it, as I will be looking at it from an analytical viewpoint, as well as a couple of first reactions. If you don't want to watch the video and just want a recommendation, if I were to rate the game out of 10, I would probably give it an 8. By the way, this game has a lot of mature and uncomfortable imagery and themes. If you're not a fan of blood, or a fan of molestation, suicide, rape, trauma, etc., then feel free to click off this video, I understand. So I'm already digging this piano tune though. Just need a lady chanting in the background and it'll already be a JRPG. So immediately, this game smacks you right across the face. The intro starts with a suicide. It's a real feel-good game, you know? So the main character, Susan Ashworth, is about to kill herself by swallowing a bunch of sleeping pills, and I freaking love this intro. It's only a cutscene, but it shows you so much you need to know. Susan is suicidal. She likes cats. You get a good look at the haunting art style of the game, and the lighting is phenomenal. Like, there's small mannerisms as well that tell you a lot about Susan. She claims the cats are her only friends, even calling one of them Teacup, so it's clear that she's completely lonely in life. Without saying much, you're already given full understanding for Susan's suicide. The images you get of her apartment show that it's a shoddy and run down, and there's a huge sense of emptiness and space in here. There's even a shot of cigarettes to give an idea of her means of coping as well. So after Susan kills herself, I honestly don't know how to word that correctly. It feels weird to say that just casually. Oh, you know, just after she just kills herself, you know? It's also clear that this game is a point-and-click adventure. Or it sort of is. You don't actually move with the mouse. It's all on the keyboard, which can be clunky. It took some time for me to get used to it, but most of the times it feels like I'm playing Step Mania, and I sucked at that game. So after you walk to the right for a bit, you end up in a parking lot, and this happens. That genuinely made me jump the first time. It was a solid scare, got me with it. Well done, Cat Lady, well done. This game also has an excellent atmosphere. Playing it with headphones, it was genuinely terrifying at times. Like, the part coming up, where I examined the body in the ambulance, I didn't even want to try and open her eyes. Like, usually in these games, I like to exhaust every possible option to get as much content as I can out of it. But there, I was like, no, I'll pass. It's rare that a game fills me with dread like that, so that was an interesting feeling. I haven't had that evoked before. So after chasing a deer around, which is probably a metaphor for something, you find a not-so-subtle metaphor of Susan's body hanging from the tree. I wonder what it means. I chopped it down. The body's gone now. Notice how the body of Susan doesn't show her eyes? Yeah, I noticed it too. I don't really know what it means, I just noticed it. Maybe it's some hipster stuff like, oh, she's blind to her future and threw it all away by killing herself. So a gate with severed animal heads on it, and we're going in? Okay, Susan, you're the boss, I guess. So after this, you get to your first big dialogue, and voice acting happens.
To my house, Susan Ashworth. I have been waiting for you, my dear. I knew you would turn up one fine day like this.
Who are you?
I have so many names, it's hard to pick one.
Okay, to be fair, the voice acting quality is not bad. It's actually quite good for an indie game. I played a bunch of games where some dude hops on like his Xbox Live mic and it sounds awful. I mean, it's kind of hypocritical of me to say that when my mic isn't very good. It's a little off at first, since the voice acting can sometimes sound like it's coming from a phone, but I got used to it, and I was never really taken out of the experience. While the conversation with the Queen of Maggots continues, I like to talk about the game's biggest strength, the writing. When it comes with an issue like suicide, there needs to be a level of respect, subtlety, and maturity. For an issue that's so real to a lot of people, that of suicidal depression, it's important not to romanticize it, and not come off as pretentious. The dialogue between characters in this game is not preachy. It's very realistic, like these characters are actual humans talking about their struggles. There's no boring 10-minute exposition. The player can easily infer people's emotions, motives, and beliefs just through what they say. The cat utilizes its ability as a game very well. A lot of people question, well, if you want a story in a game, why don't you read a book or just watch a movie? Games are about the gameplay. To that point, I say that gameplay can work as an enhancer of story. The Cat Lady's advantage of being a game is that you're in control of the pace of the story. There's a lot of symbolic and striking imagery in this game, and if you're watching a movie, it could be difficult to parse that information. There's no time constraint on a game. You can explore with Susan, examine items, gain additional dialogue. There's so much potential to build the world through player exploration. That's the advantage of telling a story through a video game. And that's what the Cat Lady is focused on. It's about telling a story, and that's perfectly okay for a video game. So the Queen of Maggots has offered us a choice. We gotta kill 5 parasites, as she calls them, and we've been given immortality. The translation for that is, restarting game overs are now part of the story. Oh, and also, Susan's body is crucified. I don't know if this is like her as a Christian. There hasn't been much hinting towards that, but I guess that might be foreshadowing to her getting betrayed because, you know, the whole story of Judas and Jesus and etc. Anyways, this is also pretty grimy blackmailing, by the way, like taking advantage of Susan when she has no friends. The Queen of Maggots also says we need a sacrifice of soul and a sacrifice of blood. Remember that for later. So you're asked to blow out a candle, and you get a vision of a dude hanging himself. Sad, right? But then some grunge metal starts kicking in, and then it awkwardly cuts out. Okay, that was kind of weird. Alright, fuck it. I'm leaving this place. It's shady. I'm going back to the shack from the starting area. That seems like a much better decision. Oh, there's blood coming up from those planks. I don't like that. God, what's that heartbeat noise? It's freaking me out. Crap. This looks like a horrible idea. Oh, fuck, I was right. Shit. Okay, crap. What the hell do I do? The door closed? Why did it close? Wait, I just need a tiny bit of blood to power that. Why did you cut off my fucking arm if I needed a tiny bit of blood? Fucking sacrifice the blood. This isn't the time for credits, dude. I gotta fix this shit. James Spanos, this is all your fault, you son of a bitch. Fuck, it's finally over. Jesus. You know, I'll give you props, Cat Lady. You certainly made me freak out. Oh, no, don't give me the flashes of cryptic images. I can never remember any of these anytime they pop up in a movie or a game. Ah, yes. Made it to Chapter 2. Only 35 minutes in the game, making some mad progress right here. So this dude I'm talking to is called Dr. X, and he's Susan's therapist. He's the only other character in this game who has a decent mic. But in all seriousness, he's got a soothing voice and everything. He seems like a caring dude. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Right? Anyways, I'm in a miserable hospital bed right now, just chilling, you know, until my lamp just fucking melts my skin. You know, it's really confusing what's real in this game or not. The wheat farm with the Queen of Maggots was obviously a dream, or a premonition, and thus, we get to one of my favorite moments in the game, the conversation with the talkative nurse, Liz. There's nothing special about this conversation, really. Liz just talks a lot about her problems, tells the story of a woman who burns herself alive by lighting a cigarette with oxygen tanks near her, or a fag as they say in British land. But I think it's really important, because remember, this game is about suicide and depression, the feeling of emptiness and hopelessness in Susan, the desire to die being so strong that she's willing to kill herself. That's a heavy idea. What's important with this conversation with Liz is she's a relatively upbeat character who's willing to listen. somebody who wants to hear the struggle of Susan while also offering exposition of her own. But Liz is another example of a very strong part of this game. Complex characters. Most characters in this game have flaws and strengths. Liz is an amalgamation of that. Like the intro, you learn so much about her through a single session of dialogue. Maybe this was so potent to me because nurses are so overworked. Her voice work is fantastic too, like she's both tired and erratic. So Liz tells you to worry about somebody called Dr. X, and it's pretty obvious who that is. Now, I'm fairly certain that this therapist dude is Dr. X, and he wants to pry into my childhood. Now, what answers do I choose? Do I lie? Do I make up some fantastical story that makes my depression obvious so I don't have to talk to him for very long? I like how the cat lady lets you formulate Susan's backstory to Dr. X. Like, canonically in the game, it was always that. When I was in this conversation, I chose the option that her mother committed suicide. The game made it pretty obvious that there's some shady stuff going on with Dr. X and the parasites that the Queen of Maggots wants you to kill. I wanted to pick the option that made it most easy for him, made it most obvious for why Susan tried to commit suicide. Like the option that's too obvious to possibly be real. To get her out of there as quick as I could, you know. It was a small moment, but it was also a powerful moment that integrated gameplay and storytelling. Now let's talk about the part of any point-and-click adventure game that personally drives me crazy. The Cryptic Puzzles. I'm slightly ashamed to admit this, but to get out of the hospital, I had to look up a guide. Now, allow me to elaborate the solution. So you walk up to these chavs blocking the door, right? Say, I want to leave, and they say you need the proper documentation. Understandable, right? So now we just have to get the discharge letter to get out. Then, after that happens, you walk back into the hallway where your room is, and a lady walks out of the bathroom. And if you approach her, you say you're a friend of her mother. You want to talk to her, because there's a discharge letter sitting on the desk, with the name Ann Burton on it. The lady that just came out of the bathroom is also called Ann Burton, so your next goal is to get a wristband with her name on it. But how do you do that? Well, when she asks you what her mother's name is, you get an extensive list of options. The unfortunate part is that if you try every option, they're all wrong. So you have to find a way to find her mother's name. And getting her name took me way too long to figure out. I scramble around with every option, I bug the receptionist at the desk, and if you check my inventory, I have a shit ton of gloves at the bottom. When I looked up the actual solution, I was baffled. I messed a bunch of things up and got that rose-rimmed nurse to put me on drugs for ringing the bell for assistance. This put me in the drug world. When you awake in the drug world, you see an SH on the left and an A on the right. Now I assume this is part of the mother's name, since it's the only word you need for this puzzle, but more on that later. And you know, I just find a giant beating heart and go, oh, that's just casual, and figured it would be important. I couldn't do anything with it, so I just went back to bed. Okay, so here's the solution. You have to get a shard of glass from the mirror, but you must examine the mirror first, and then examine it again, and then there will be an option to take it. Then you have to turn the sink on hot water, wait 15 seconds or so, and once you do that, the rest of Anne's mother's name will appear, and it is Sheila. Now this is a clever solution and all, but 15 seconds to wait? Every other response to this game is instant. Why is this the only time where you have to wait? The steam particles don't even appear until about 6 seconds of waiting in the room, so unless you're paying incredibly close attention, you won't even notice a change on the mirror. So now you have to go on the drugs again and return to the dream. You see that on the mirror, it's Sheila altogether, and Susan has the knowledge now. You also need to go back to the heart with a shard of glass while some screams play in the background, but don't worry about that. And you have to take the red Kool-Aid to Anne, who's addicted to it. By the way, the red Kool-Aid is called happy drugs, so there's nothing shady going on in this hospital at all. So now you front the name to her, you flex on Anne, and she's like, oh yeah, you got it wrong like 13 times, but I will 14th time's the charm. That was my Anne impression. So after you give her the Kool-Aid, she swaps the wristbands with you, and now you gotta go get the discharge papers. So the final nail on this cryptic coffin is you have to open the toilet and cram a bunch of gloves in there and flush it. Then you ring the bell, and the lady with the rose-rimmed glasses comes in and goes,
It's the gloves. Again! I guess I'll have to get my hands dirty since the cleaner's called in sick.
Like it's just a regular occurrence, you know? They cram the gloves in again. I just hate when people do that, you know? Also, Susan is mad sassy. So after all that, after that absurd sequence of events is over, and I'm finally free from that hallway I was stuck on for half an hour, I get caught by Dr. X. Great. So Dr. X takes Susan for a final interview, talks to her about suicide and how people have the thoughts at some point in their life, and Susan has a flashback. So Liz wants to escort Susan to freedom. She wants to get her out of the hospital, but she doesn't actually want that. She wants to escape. She talks to Susan like it's not about Susan's safety, it's also about her safety as well. Now, if you pay attention to the paintings in the background as I walk, they're also the ones that were in the house with the Queen of Maggots, which is a subtle foreshadowing to this.
What are we doing on the roof? Liz! What the hell are you doing?
Liz attempting to kill herself. See, this moment was super poignant for me, because I know what the strain of work as a nurse can do to somebody. There's a huge problem with medical culture, and it's obscenely long work hours. Put yourself in Liz's situation. Her boyfriend broke up with her. She's likely distant from a lot of people she loves. Everybody at the hospital is either depressed or incredibly stressed, and nobody is willing to listen to her. It's why she digressed so much to you. She probably had that odd story of a lady killing herself with a cigarette bundled up for months. But what I love about this scene is Susan has turned around the roles. She's convincing Liz to not make the same mistake she did. So there's development of Susan. She sees somebody that mattered to her about to kill herself, and there's a slight change in her character there. I was really determined to make every right decision in this scene, to show her that I listened, but regardless of what you do, this happens. I'm really good at this game, trust me. But if you listen, you get an achievement, dude, let's go! After that happens, it cuts back to the conversation with Dr. X, and the door is locked, and he stabs me. Like, right in the middle of his office. Like, couldn't have picked a better location to stab me multiple times. We gotta clean this shit up now, man. So after he kills me, I'm in a movie theater, okay. So this eyeball dude pops up, and all I have to say about him is, thank God there's subtitles because I can't understand a single word he's saying. So he tells me to walk to the doors on the right to play with his girls, and okay. Creepy dolls covered in blood. This part is like a riddle, and you have to ask which doll will take you through the correct door. However, one tells only truths, and the other tells only lies, and you don't know which one is which. The problem with this is I accidentally opened the door just after asking one of them which door to go through, and I think I missed a lot of plot development here. Also, remember these dolls for the later part of this video, they're important, and the dolls creepily follow you as you walk. I don't really like that. So you're taking to Candleland and you see a dying old lady in a hospital after you blow out the candle. I don't know what it means, it might be Susan on her deathbed and nobody being there for her. But a couple of dudes walk in from behind the windows, so I don't know. There's a lot going on here that mystifies me. Eventually I open a body bag and find myself in it. Just happens sometimes, you know? But it totally opens its eyes at me, which is creepy. So Susan comes back to life and she says this.
You treacherous, dirty bastard. I opened my heart to you, and you stabbed me to death in cold blood.
That's a bit of an understatement. Like you wake up in a padded room, body stabbed, blood everywhere, people pinned to walls, and you're like, he really isn't a nice dude. Also, Susan is totally immortal, like she can't die, so no matter what, she has infinite tries to kill the doctor. Now, I like the doctor's character. You see a lot of kindness to a man who is fucking insane and does shit like this to people. That he uses wires to prop the bodies up into exact position, even using makeup to make the art immaculate, and that's just revolting. And it's so appalling because it's real. Some serial killers do things like this, and I hate that, and it makes me hate Dr. X even more. What's confusing is you find Liz's body impaled to a cage. It brings up a lot of questions about Susan's sanity. Was her suicide made up? Was it what Susan believed she would do? Like, she projected her fate into her, and she made a reality through her imagination? Well, I'll get to that later. So I'm posed with a question to stay and kill the Doctor with a makeshift weapon, or leave with the key that Liz left behind. It signifies that the meeting with Liz was real, and she knew that something awful had happened to Susan. She didn't want her to suffer the same fate. It's a character revelation that's subtle and effective. I've got my weapon made, and I'm ready to face the Doctor, and he pulls a complete 180.
I don't need eyes to enjoy your fear. Scream louder, little bitch! Scream your lungs out! Louder, I said!
So he does a little Dougie to her screams, and this is really fucked up. Can we go back to like 140, the game I did before, just jumping around as a shape and colorful environments? This is making me uncomfortable. Get my mace ready to attack, and I'm giving an option of hilariously cheesy one-liners. I say nothing here because, I mean, why would you just give away your position? But to make up for it, I drop this bomb.
Who are you? They call me the cat lady. Now get out of here.
Yeah, let's go. And now we move on to chapter 3, which might be my favorite of all the chapters in the game. It's called River, and it starts with a cutscene of Susan looking over the river all on her own with a sunset. A very calming image right after the horrific sights earlier. It's a good juxtaposition. This is the start of the chapter. I just returned home from killing a crazed murderer, bloody as hell, which I'm surprised nobody saw and questioned Susan on the way there. Like, did nobody phone the police when they saw an unshowered, bloodied middle-aged woman just walking around at night? But a new mechanic is introduced just for this chapter. Susan's stress gauge. She gets stressed initially because her power is out due to neglected bills. And the whole chapter is just you exploring the apartment and trying to clean yourself up, smoke a cigarette, and get some coffee. You also avoid acts that increase the stress gauge, and that's it. It's so simple, but it's effective. I like it because it's quiet time. Like, you're all on your own, and you just get some time to explore the house at your own pace. You can learn hints of Susan's past by examining her wine cabinet, learn that she enjoys playing the piano and it attracts cats, that she's a smoker, and many other things if you're willing to look. The house tells a history if you're interested in it. There's also a positive vibes gauge for Susan. I don't know the real name, that's just what I'm going to call it. And the objective is to find a way to fill the positive gauge up before the stress gauge, or else Susan will have a mental breakdown. And that's so powerful to me. It reminds you that the game's main battle is mental illness or depression. Susan just saw some incredibly traumatizing imagery, so it makes sense that she'd be experiencing some issues. See, I don't mind the part with the killer. It was incredibly striking and had some very powerful imagery, yet I feel that it somewhat takes a lot of the focus away for the game's big hook for me, the suicidal depression. I was interested in Susan and her reasoning for suicide, and the game attempts to balance these two elements out, the serial killer killing rampage and Susan's depression, yet they very rarely work in balance. They feel like two completely different story aspects and they don't complement each other. Rather, they even get in the way of each other. But this moment in the apartment is so strong for me because it's so real. Like, picture yourself in this situation. You had a super stressful day, you come home to your house, and it's completely dark and completely empty. All you can hear is the muffled rain batting on the windows and the roof. It's a freaky image, right? But you can picture it, because it's very real. Picturing walking through a museum of art made of dead bodies is a bit harder to grasp that emotional attachment to because, well, thankfully not many people have experienced that. But the apartment really reinforces the isolation aspect for Susan's life. She's alone, there's nobody to live for. The one person that could have been her friend so far, Liz, is dead. Like, this is just Susan putting some old milk in her coffee and ruining it. That's the extent of the problems in this chapter, and it's a welcome change. It shows how even the littlest things can really just get on your nerves and just accumulate into an explosive mess. Now, once you smoke, have your coffee, Susan plays the piano to attract the cats to cheer her up, and it plays a nice little upbeat song. There's something really atmospheric about this moment. The soundtrack has been really dismal and gloomy after this point, a mix of somber piano and grunge rock. And now you hear happy inflections in Susan's voice as well while the upbeat song on the piano plays. Like, it's a tiny slice of happiness for once, and I felt really good for Susan. Now, unfortunately, those times can't last forever, as that small slice of happiness is still just, well, a slice. Susan hears someone knocking on the door, and it's a bald chav at the door named Brian reprimanding her for playing the piano. And then he says this.
Damn cat lady, they should lock her up somewhere. Fucking nutcase.
And I fuck up and start having a mental breakdown. Sorry about that, Susan. For about 2 minutes you lose control and Susan starts to walk around the apartment looking for cats, punching her mirror, and she is going crazy, man. If you have a mental breakdown, Susan cuts back to the river and says she takes to the razor now. So I basically made her slit her wrists to alleviate pain. Whoops, sorry about that one, Susan. So chapter 4 begins, and there's a pest control man driving his van. Doesn't seem too bad, until he opens his van at his mansion and drags a body out. Great, I wonder where this is gonna go. So after Susan wakes up, there's somebody knocking on the door, and we're introduced to another very important character, Mitzi Hunt. Now I like Mitzi, she's cool. You also find out she's the one that took you to the hospital when Susan tried to kill herself. Mitzi wants a room to rent, and Susan needs the money, so we've got a perfect combo here, right? Mitzi also broke into your house when she heard the cats meowing for Susan's dead body, which is kind of invasive. Like, she broke into your house and lied about being Susan's daughter. But Mitzi is also homeless. She chills with homeless dudes and rats. But she seems down to earth. She's got a fresh new outfit that she's humorously defensive about. You know, I wouldn't mind letting her rent out the apartment. The previous chapter took a lot more time to show how poor and apathetic Susan is, so it would be nice to have some energy in the house. So now Mitzi wants to see the house after some arguing, and she exclaims that the shitty room is perfect. You know, I can dig Mitzi, you know? I'm pretty minimalistic. Shower, power outlet for a laptop, a bed, and I'm fine with that. That's my room. Now, Susan is understandably curious why Mitzi wants the room in the apartment, and she says that it's personal and it's too long. That doesn't really help. Well, she does say that she's tracking down a person and that person has done something really bad. Now, there's a lot going on in this conversation. There's a sense of uneasiness between the two of them. Mitzi seems very ambiguous and not very revealing of her past, particularly her reasoning for coming and what happened with her mother. There's a balance of tension between her and Susan, while also having a bit of compassion between the two of them. It feels like a real conversation between two humans, and I like that. Here's a funny little quip from Mitzi. There's a lot of lightheartedness here, and I can dig that. It's funny because the start of chapter 4 essentially starts with a long 20-minute cutscene, but I didn't even notice it was that long. It was really engaging for the whole time. This is really well done. And then the big moment happens.
I'll show you. Here, Miss Ashworth. Take a good look, because I'm not going to do it again.
Mitzi has cancer. And that's an odd situation for them to be in. Susan is a person who hates living and wants to die, but Mitzi is a character who's going to die, regardless of what she does. Susan doesn't say anything to her, it's just silence. I think this is a big revelation for her. Also, we cut to Susan getting kidnapped by that pest dude who dragged the body out back at the beginning, and this is what I mean when I say there's a disconnect between story and gameplay. The formula for every chapter goes like this. A lot of dialogue between Susan and a character, a lot of exposition, and Susan exploring a crazy environment with a large bulk of puzzle solving. The gameplay usually occurs in the environment with the serial killers, but it feels a bit over the top. Like, in the middle of gameplay, it'll just cut away to Susan at her apartment talking to Mitzi. The story and the development of the characters are completely separate from the location and the gameplay. And, I don't know, it feels somewhat unfocused, like the developers just wanted something for you to do while the story happens. Because the story and the characters are the strongest part of this game. Hell, they're usually the strongest part of any point-and-click adventure. It just feels that there's a ton going on in this game that's not very long. Like, this creepy lady with the goofy voice just popped in, and these two are completely irredeemable. Like, they're cannibals. They eat cats, man. They murder people. There's no depth to them. They just pop up as awful, horrible people and Susan has to kill them. Crazy old lady even pours bleach on Susan's eyes. That's all kind of messed up. But it's like, these parts are really interesting, yeah, but they also feel like filler, which I don't want to say. Like, the developers were like, oh, they need something to do at least, they can't just be watching cutscenes, that'll just be like a movie. And to make this part even more confusing, you have to play as a cat and bring a gun to Susan to shoot herself. Okay? But I will admit, for all the complaining I just did, they do give some time to flesh out the pest control dude. He's fucking insane, but he thinks he's morally righteous by saving some dinner for Susan and providing her a gun so she doesn't have to be eaten. What a nice guy he is. Though I will admit, this moment when Susan shoots herself after she loses her eyesight from the bleach did get me good. Just the "you are dead's" blurriness reminds me of a game over screen on like a PS1 game. Like there's an image awkwardly cropped at the bottom as well, and it hangs for such a long time. I actually thought I messed something up at this point. But the art just ends up being Mitzi's boyfriends, and at this point, you learn a lot about her and her past. So you learn that her boyfriend's name is Jack, and that he's the reason that she's at Susan's apartment. Mitzi's only close friend she had to talk to growing up was Jack. Nobody else was there for her, and they had a massive fight because of her cancer. Why he was that enraged, I can only speculate. Perhaps it was the frustration with the world for taking away the only person he loved as well. Perhaps he was already on the edge from something earlier and this just caused a breaking point for him. The player can only speculate because Mitzi is the storyteller. The extent of our knowledge is the extent of her knowledge in fiction. Perhaps her story, too, is a lie, who knows. I doubt it though, there isn't really a reason to lie to Susan about your crappy past. All we know about Jack is he changes as a person. He becomes gloomy, obsessed with the idea of death itself, the idea of suicide. What's interesting is Mitzi is scared of fog, but Susan isn't. Fog is a really common metaphor for the unknown. Mitzi is scared of what she isn't sure of. She was probably initially terrified of her cancer, and yet she knows exactly when she's going to die. She's content with that finality, yet she's scared of what she doesn't know, while Susan isn't scared of the fog. Susan has nothing to live for. What lies in the unknown could be a welcome change for her. Maybe a change of pace could benefit Susan. She doesn't really seem to have a comfort zone outside of her cats is all. What's creepy is Jack took to the internet for coping with his feelings. In fact, he took to a suicide forum, and on there's a guy called the Eye of Adam, and he does something completely horrible to others. He convinces them to commit suicide, and that's terrifying. To me, it's more terrifying than being trapped in a house with crazed murderers, and it's scarier because you know for sure that something like that happens in real life. People like that, awful, horrible people on the internet who convince people in a weak mental state to kill themselves, those people exist. There's absolutely pathetic people who stay at the computer all day and just tell people the ways they can end their lives. People who take advantage of others. And that's so scary because his horrible acts are not obvious like Dr. X or the pest control dude. His acts are done through words, and it's tough to catch a guy like that. He has the anonymity of the internet, and it's tough to link assisted suicide to a person who's incredibly secretive with their identity. But the worst part is the fact that he calls himself the Eye of Adam. Like it's some poetic justice he's doing unto others. Like he believes he's doing something of higher importance from a position of power. Adam is an advocate of death. He gives them a reason to die, manipulates them, and tells them it is correct. This wouldn't work on a sane person, yet taking advantage of people on a suicide help forum? That's a unique and repulsive low for a video game villain. See, I like the Eye of Adam, more than the parasites the Queen of Maggots wants Susan to kill, because as you find out, the Eye of Adam is living in Susan's apartment. He's right there, he's always been there. What's worse is the Eye of Adam isn't just a crazed killer. Jack tells Mitzi to go to a car graveyard, and she finds him trapped in his car with poisonous gas. But there's posters on it saying, "Do not open the windows." The Eye of Adam does not want any accidental casualties, and that's even scarier. That it's cold, calculated murder with purpose. Adam clearly sees it as an artistic means, to die willingly with a clear mind and prepare for it. Mitzi doesn't see any of that. She, Susan, and the player just see it as cold-blooded murder. In the end, Mitzi and Susan are resolute in trying to find the Eye of Adam. They make up, They're stronger friends, and it cuts back to Susan trying to kill the pest control dude and his crazy wife. There's not much I can say about the mansion that I haven't said about the hospital, for example. It's very atmospheric, it's very pretty, and it has a lot of striking imagery, and even more cryptic puzzles. But the puzzles aren't as bad as the hospital. It's a bit better for this one. What I really want to talk about is when Susan finds a phone in the pest control dude's house and tries to call the police. This conversation was incredibly infuriating, but in a good way. It shows the general public's conception of mental illness, that people with mental issues feel ostracized because nobody takes them seriously. Susan tells the police of the serial murderers, but the receptionist dances around the subject and is unable to fully address it. It's a powerful moment that places Susan and a lot of people who have suffered from serious mental illnesses in a meek position. Nobody is willing to listen, nobody is willing to accept them, and that just escalates the problem. I found this as a small but potent moment and a strong way of saying that message. Eventually, Susan gets the two ingredients to make the gas that killed Jack. You need pesticide and bleach, and that's it. And you use that to kill the pest control dude that's asleep. There is actually a really high tense situation here that I liked. You have to phone the mansion's number on the pest control dude's cell phone to distract the old chopping lady from chopping cat meat for dinner, so you can get the pesticide from behind her back. What's freaky about this is I was never able to get past her. She always seems to get you, and it's always so scary when it happens. Now I've got what I need. I pop the gas mask on, load the bucket with the mix, and watch the creepy, murdery molester dude die. But more importantly, I got a shotgun, and we all know what's coming next. I'm off to find the lady with the meat, but she's not in her room. She's really hiding in the bathtub. How did she know I was coming? Anyway, Susan kills her like a badass and walks off like a cool dude. Oh geez, these songs are interesting. This doesn't even look like Susan. It looks like an OC I made when I was 10 or hung from Resident Evil. I don't know, maybe that's what they were going for. So I come back and Mitzi is like, yo, what took a century, mate? And Susan is like, do not worry, child. Which is weird. Like, why not at least say, hey, I was with two murderers. They were about to eat me. That was kind of strange. So things have chilled down. Susan just kind of, gets over all of that. But this scene is pretty humorous. Susan trying to understand Facebook. She thinks it's silly to tell people that she's having a shit day, which is a pretty bad mentality to have in my opinion. Like, we all hate people on Facebook who post vague, negative shit, but I think it's also really important to share negative feelings. Even if it feels that nobody is listening, it's good to release it at least. So after piano with cats and chill, Mitzi and Susan formulate how to find the Eye of Adam. They iron out who's in which apartment flat. So here's what we got. We got the crazy dog lady in flat 2, empty with a question mark, love that guy, in flat 1, Joe and Ivy Davis living across from our flat, Brian the Chav, old man in flat 5, just old man, a baby living on its own in flat 8, and a gun noise. Okay, shit, this will actually be pretty tough, won't it? It's also important to note that when Mitzi asks Susan about having children, Susan gets really defensive. Or rather, I choose the option, so I got defensive, I guess. So there's a bit of a spat over this. Susan doesn't want her private information out to Mitzi. It's clear there's a history here, and it's also clear that this is a setup for something coming very soon. Because, whoa, there's some knocking at the door. Now, statistics show that this 100% leads to a problem for Susan. Let's go and answer it. Let's just find out who's knocking, right? Spoilers, it's this dude with the flowers. Terrifying. Yeah, literally, just randomly, some dude with a crowbar and some flowers comes into the apartment. Like, he just walks in, and again, nobody notices, and he just strolls on through. You could chalk that up to a theory that this is all in Susan's head, or you could chalk that up to just a plot hole. That's up to you. So after Susan gets knocked out, she awakes in a dock with ships? Okay, this is clearly a dream. Again, this is Chapter 5's big puzzle room, but I actually like this one. There's a lot of metaphoric imagery here that I'll be getting into. So after entering the door to the left into the Room of Skulls, I am once again taken to blow out a third candle for the Queen of Maggots. And this is the vision I get. Also notice there's a creepy monster in the background that looks like Susan. Notice what it's doing with its hands. We'll be back for that one later. I like the image of this shipyard. It's desolate. It's empty. It's depressing. It's Susan. Notice how in this shot, Susan is in the background with a knife in her hospital gown. After she stabs this monster, I think that's a sign that she's officially changed as a person. The drugged hospital Susan is a shell of her former self. It's her at her weakest point. She's recovered now. She has Mitzi, she has her cats, and she has an actual goal. Also look how the Susan you're controlling is confidently strutting away, while the hospitalized Susan stutters and struggles. Susan is walking away confidently from the meek character she once was. After you walk, you come to an elevator that needs 2 people, and Susan says goodbye to the other world. This is one of my favorite moments. As Susan sinks under the water, she sees dead bodies floating. The water is the same color as the liquid used to disinfect bodies at the pest control dude's place. There's a poem, and yes, I'm quoting a fucking poem like a loser, by Robert Frost called Desert Places. Here's a third stanza of the poem. As lonely as it is, that loneliness will be more lonely ere it will be less. A blanker whiteness of benighted snow, with no expression, nothing to express. That to me is a summation of depression itself. The feeling of nothingness. The sinking into water, deeper and deeper, not knowing how to get out, not knowing how to feel happy and enjoy what you used to love. See, I've been very critical on this game for a while, perhaps too critical. I've been speaking very negatively, even though I really like the game. I've been spending a lot of time talking about how there are aspects that I believe are weaker, but really, I don't think anything in this game is bad, just weak in comparison. I believe the moments involving depression are strong and effective. The moments with the serial killers are powerful for shock value, yet they lack a strong emotional resonance with me personally. I don't know, perhaps that's only me and others feel differently, but I loved that puzzle section just that we had because, well, it was easy. But it was also surreal, and it's clear what it meant. But like I said, the real purpose of Chapter 5 is not the serial killer or that dream segment, it's Susan's past. This dream sequence consists of a creepy dude phoning her asking for flowers, which is implied to be the man who just attacked her and Mitzi in the present, but also Susan reveals that she's cheating on her husband Eric with the dude on the phone. That's interesting to me because that shows that she's not pure and that she's actually done some really bad things. She's not only just a victim, and I appreciate that she's not perfect, that makes her more interesting. So this argument between Eric and Susan was really intense, actually. Like, lovers' arguments are always really uncomfortable to me. I don't know, it just feels like the breaking between 2 people who are really close. I appreciate the attention to detail on this fight. Like, it really was the night that fucked Susan up the most, because the window with the flowers that the creepy dude gave Susan killed her 6-month-old daughter, Zoe. One thing leads to another, Eric kills himself, and Susan's sadness is explained. Like, there's not much hope to have after a series of awful events just happens. So creepy stalker dude walks in and takes Mitzi away. And what happens next is kinda goofy. The killer dude points at the piano. He wants Susan to play. If the flowers weren't enough, this should signify that this killer is the guy that Susan cheated on Eric with. He wants to hear her play, while Mitzi hangs from the chair. I'll admit this is a very frightening image, that you're completely powerless to help, and this is just to satisfy some sick need of the killer. So the stupid part happens here. Just watch. The cats literally eat the dude, and it is never brought up again. This is just something that happens. I guess cats just do that, and I didn't know about it. Oh, and I need to save Mitzi, I guess. But I gotta look at the kitty first. Hold up, Mitzi. I know you're dying and everything, but I just gotta look at this little cat. Eventually, I pull her up on a chair, and Susan gets a knife and cuts her down. Now, I gotta say, you got a crazed killer's blood all over the carpet and the closet, right? This place is gonna smell fucking horrendous after this. And Susan just walks away, saying, "Don't look, Mitzi." Like, oh, no. I think she's gonna have some trouble sleeping, Susan. She was taped up with you in a bathtub. She was knocked out by a crowbar. She was tied up and muffled while she was forced to watch you play the piano. Then some cats come in and attack the man. Like, little house cats just start eating him alive, and she just gets a, "Don't look, Mitzi." Like, what, is she just supposed to sleep it off? She is going to need a ridiculous amount of therapy after that guy. Freaking Susan, just stone cold, dude. Just stone cold. Anyways, we move on to chapter 6, the longest chapter, and my second favorite. And it's my second favorite because it's the most like an adventure game. See, the objective is to explore every flat and see if you can find the Eye of Adam. You're finally back on track after some admittedly interesting filler. Like, again, the whole chapter is essentially the long cryptic puzzle section, but I like it because it integrates story and gameplay very well. As you explore and try to get into every apartment, you unpeel more about everybody here and a little about Susan and Mitzi as well. As you enter apartments, you see more of people and how, like Susan, their homes reflect who they are. For example, the first flat I went to was the empty one on the first floor, and yeah, it's pretty fucking empty and moldy. As you walk through, you see a huge hole on the ceiling, a pretty dead giveaway that you'll need to come back later. Next up on my list is Flat 5 with the old man on it, and Mitzi gets put on blast by Susan for disrespecting elders. And this old guy, he's the best. Not because his voice is literally just a dude doing an old man voice. He pretends to have poor hearing, and the conversation between him and Mitzi is pretty humorous. Like, if I was old and somebody came up to me with an internet service provider, I'd probably do what this old man does and just pretend I'm going crazy so I can watch my NCIS reruns. They won't watch themselves, man. But I mean, it's nice to have some levity for once is all. After all that, you know, death, abuse, arguments, gore, blood, rape, it's just nice to have a pure, sweet, innocent old man. Nothing could possibly go wrong, right? Also, this line.
Do you think he'll be back with a shotgun?
Don't be silly. This isn't America.
After some discussion with old man Jenkins, he keeps talking about his dead wife, but it's all hopeless. He doesn't understand what we're saying, and we decide to move on to another flat with the judgment that he's completely harmless and can't be the Eye of Adam. So there's a sofa that a bunch of kitties love to hang around, and after you cut it open by using a shard from a vase, you just find a perfect bottle of valerian root extract. What is valerian root extract, you ask?
Hey,
I don't know.
look at this.
Didn't say cats love it, and she's the cat lady, so I guess she knows. So this is kind of weird. Like, you have to put a cloth on a radiator and soak that cloth in the valerian steel extract blade, and the kitties come to it. Maybe I'm an idiot, but wouldn't that be pretty hot? Like, wouldn't the cats, like, hurt their paws at least standing on it? But really, this is a chance to get the old dog lady at the bottom of the stairs away so you can get into her flat and the basement behind her.
William! Come back, my little prince!
What a race that was between three equals. Truly Olympic caliber. Reminds me of those racing minigames of Mario Party that are complete luck. It cracks me up. Alright, let's go and inspect the basement now the dog lady is gone. This couldn't possibly go wrong. We haven't seen anything horrible in basements at all this game. Well, it's certainly a basement. I pick up some items and Susan tells Mitzi of the legend of the Cat Widow, which is what this chapter is named after. It's kind of a cool moment and provides more guidance for what I need to do next. I need red paint, I need soot to color the dress black, and I need a mask to complete the look. This is all to scare Brian. The dude had yelled at Susan previously for playing the piano for 2 seconds. Both of them want to prank him and freak him out, which I thought was kind of mean. Until Susan pointed out that he was the guy who called the pest control dude, which led to Susan getting trapped in that mansion, feel like she was getting murdered, and worse of all, he hurt the cats. Needless to say, Brian's main motivation is to harm the cats. He's the worst villain in this game. This is something I cannot abide by. So it became my main goal to get the materials needed. I already got the paint and the coal chute, so I'm 1/3 of the way there. Next on my list is Flat 5, Joe and Ivy Davis's, which Mitzi kindly lockpicked open, bless her soul, and shit's about to get spooky, so brace yourselves. For reference, this is a flat with a big hole in the ground. That's it. It probably doesn't represent anything, it's just a hole in the ground. Now eventually, as you keep walking to the right, you find a door with 666 written on it, which, do people even find this scary? I think most things just include this as a joke now. Even Susan was like, oh great, another freak. Like, even she knows that some supernatural bullshit is coming, and she's just going through the motions at this point. Eventually, you rip off one of the Davis Listen doorknobs like a good neighbor and put it on the devil door and go inside. Do I even want to go in here? No, I don't want to go in here, actually. Things are looking suspicious. Dark bathroom, weird figurines standing upright in the bathtub behind a door that says 666. This is gonna lead to some bullshit, isn't it? Well, it leads to a power cable, but it also leads to Joe coming inside the apartment. This isn't good. Now this is where things get suspicious. As the room is dark on the right, there's a vibrating, bloody female body that disappears when Susan turns on the light. As that happens, Susan backpedals out of the room right into Joe Davis. Scandalous. No, it's terrifying. He has a good microphone. He doesn't sound like a dollar store Xbox Live mic. Although he sounds like he's really out of breath. He's like, you stupid, evil, bitch. And then super casually, he's like, who are you, man? Let's go and get some tea in my probably another goddamn rape dungeon because it's the cat lady. Hey, does anybody remember when this game was about suicide? Because I don't. To avoid sounding like a broken record, surprise, Joe walks Susan down and she falls into the hole in his flat and ends up in some shady place. She dies from the fall, I'd assume, and the doors read, Dexter came through here. Who's Dexter? I don't know. Also, Joe is crazy. What a surprise. But he does have a convincing voice actor, and his apartment window in the back is the same effect as when Susan was on drugs at the hospital earlier in the game. So Joe wants you to talk to his wife Ivy in the room to the left to convince her to talk. She has apparently been asleep for a very long time and will not wake up. But she's not dead, according to him, at least, so it has to be true. Here's Joe's wife, just a shadow, burnt to a crisp. This isn't weird at all, Joe. This isn't suspicious whatsoever, man. So Ivy says misery, and she wants the Stephen King book, Misery, which is on their bookshelf. In there is a crank to operate the machine behind her. That machine changes the mirrors' position. I'm actually really sad this took me so long to figure out. I don't know if there's a correct order to turn these mirrors, but by sheer dumb luck, I got it to work. Ivy starts freaking out, disgusted with how she looks, and it's a really creepy moment. And then Joe starts flipping out, claiming that this is a monster, and it's not his wife, and this is just really confusing. Like, I enjoy this part, it's haunting, it's scary, it's intriguing, it's all that, but it's also a distraction. Like, it's just a sidestep, and they needed an excuse to put some weird imagery in this chapter. And then Joe points a gun at Susan, says she's better off dead, and it all turned out to be in her head. Or was it? I'm honestly confused as to what's real or not in this game. I think this entire game at this point is something that Susan conjured up herself. It's something she manifested as some weird revenge fantasy for the world. I mean, that's my theory, at least, and I have evidence for it. Remember the visions Susan had when she blew out the candles? The car flipping, the dead old lady, and the man hanging himself? The man looked a lot like Eric. Are those candle visions real? Are they meant to signify reality, or are those fake? Susan claims they found Eric's dead body laying in a forest, so is her recollection false? It can't be. That was her husband, and she had no reason to lie to Mitzi about it. Or maybe it was the hanging, and maybe she felt there was too much shame to it, and maybe that contributed to her idea of suicide. I guess what I'm getting at here is that this is all very confusing. There are hints and strands of evidence spread all across the game as to what's really happening, yet I've neither the planning nor understanding required to solve all of it. And honestly, I know I've been locking a lot of this convolutedness a lot, but it was mostly for a lack of consistency and focus. I appreciate the surreal locations and imagery in this game. They are a welcome break from reality, yet this game also brings up a lot of questions, and it provides very few answers for those. Joe and Ivy Davis, for example, are not actually in this apartment. They never were. When Mitzi left and Joe walked into the door, that was Susan imagining his entrance. How can I, as a player, trust Susan when she's such an unreliable narrator? She's clearly still mentally unstable, So what of all of this is real? It's difficult to string it all together, and I'm sure there are hundreds of theories on the internet that do it much better than I can. Look, I'm going to be skipping a lot of this chapter as I tackle most of the interesting material for this game early on. The other flats are pretty inconspicuous. You scare Brian, you make him pee himself and faint, and I feel kinda bad. He's lonely, just like Susan. His wife is gone and there's not much purpose for him. But he's a chav, so I guess it's okay. So once every possible flat has been explored, Mitzi and Susan rendezvous back at their flat, and there's a note on the door. The note is from the Eye of Adam himself. He says to meet at flat 5 at midnight, the one with the old man. Then chapter 6 ends with a focus on the Outlet Haven sign in the basement, the hotel that Joe said him and Ivy stayed at. And then, well, behind the wall in the basement are the two of them. But Ivy's not looking so hot. Remember when Joe was kind of compassionate? Yeah, no, he's a piece of garbage. I like this scene though. Like, it gives the two of them history. Like, there's a past shrouded in mystery, and you can fill in the gaps with your mind. Also, it's incredibly fucked up. Midnight is struck, and it's time to face the Eye of Adam. Flat 5 is chemically. It's suspicious. He's locked his door with a ton of Christmas lights, and it's very imposing. So it turns out the old man on flat 5 is the father of the Eye of Adam. He has supplied Adam financially, under the threat that, if he didn't, Adam would likely murder him. The father talks about his efforts not being enough. Like, again, even with the Eye of Adam, there's a history just through this one line. Did he have mental problems? Social problems? What led him to be like this? The father doesn't even know, and he did everything he could to try and fix this. This characterizes both the father and the Eye of Adam very quickly, and is yet another example of this game's great writing. So the father gives you a gas mask, as Adam plans to poison the flat and kill them all. The father claims Adam won't do it if he doesn't wear the gas mask, but he does anyways. Mitzi wants you to put on the gas mask. She wants you to live, as she's gonna die of cancer in 6 months anyways. And you have a choice here. I gave the mask to Mitzi, as I knew Susan would have to come back because death hasn't stopped her before, and it wouldn't stop her now. I hug goodbye as Old Man Jenkins just dies behind them and Susan collapses. Death, however, brings Susan back to the dream world where the Queen of Maggots resides. Everything has come full circle. So, uncharacteristically of this game, you are given a big choice. The Queen of Maggots points out that 2 candles remain lit, and one must be blown out. Yet, after everything Susan has gone through, after everything she's seen, you finally have the option to say no. You don't have to blow up the candles, and that's just what I did. Susan has now gained full autonomy. She was confident she would reawaken immediately. She knows that, without the Queen of Maggots, she no longer has her immortality. This is her last shot, and she finally values life once again. People around her have given her hope. They have shown that they can listen. And thus we are at the climax of the game. Susan and Mitzi confronting the Eye of Adam. I love this room, too. It's so ominous. It has these old, grainy photos, presumably of victims of his, but it also has very advanced technology operating simultaneously. But my favorite part about Adam is that he's just a cripple in a wheelchair, paralyzed everywhere in his body except for his eye, which controls a device on the keyboard. And there's something incredibly creepy about him, too. He's this sad, pathetic, lonely man whose only pleasure is a revolting philosophy around suicide. Mitzi pulls a gun on Adam, and Susan is understandably concerned. I mean, your roommate had a gun on them this entire time and lied about it. Doesn't that break the trust that they've been establishing up until this point? Mitzi is being very irrational. The man who ruined her life, the person who convinced Jack to kill himself, can't even talk to her. He's physically unable to. She wants him to cower, she wants him to reel and beg for forgiveness, but he's not giving it. Mitzi looks like the crazy person in this situation. Susan even points out that he's incredibly pathetic, he isn't even worth the time. Adam can type using his eye, and the man doesn't even bother to capitalize. Like, I get it, you can only type with eyeball tracking, and you likely can't hold the shift key with one eyeball, and hitting caps lock probably takes a lot of effort to revert, and, like, okay, I'm getting way off topic, sorry. Mitzi repeatedly gets taunted by Adam. Adam definitely knows that Mitzi won't fire the shot, and if she does, there are oxygen tanks all over the room leaking. If she fires the shot, the room will blow up, killing all 3 of them. Although it seemed unlikely that Mitzi would pull the trigger, she's leaning more and more towards it. And what's even more shocking is Mitzi lied about her backstory as well. She grew up in an orphanage, and Jack was her only friend there. She doesn't have any parents. She has nobody to live for, and nobody that trusts her. You spend a lot of this game with Mitzi. Hell, you spent the entire last chapter with her at her side. Which is why it's so fitting that what convinces her to stop is Susan saying they're friends and that they care about each other. Level heads prevail, and although Mitzi is doomed to die, they both make it a priority to spend time together. What I find fascinating about the ending of The Cat Lady is that it's positive. It has an optimistic perspective. That's admirable. Any form of media that deals with suicide or depression often handles it very poorly or is unsure on how to tackle it. I like how The Cat Lady approaches it from a realistic perspective, not a romanticized one. Susan is a woman. She isn't a maniac, depressive stereotype. She has happiness, she has breakdowns, she has struggles, and she has strengths. She is a human being. Susan finds help on suicide help forums. Now that the Eye of Adam is gone, she is no longer alone and can enjoy herself with others. Susan has found purpose in trying to help people, listen to their problems, and relay her stories to them. It's pretty admirable, and I think with all the previous development showing how much Susan has died, been reborn, grown, and changed is good. The final shots are of a bright blue sky. The game has been using grays, blacks, and only saving bright imagery for very specific symbols such as flowers or blood. It's finally daytime to Susan, and there's finally hope for her. Susan is on the road to recovery, and it looks very bright for her. So that's The Cat Lady, and I loved it. If I were to give it a number rating, I would likely give it a great 8 out of 10. It's a very strong game with a very strong premise and a fantastic story to tell. I was enthralled and gripped through it, even though the contrived puzzles took me out of it sometimes. I'm glad I finished it fully. Looking back on the footage while writing the script, I noticed a lot of details and symbols that I'm gonna try and relay here to the best of my abilities. Babies, for example, are terrifying to Susan, literally because she's traumatized that flowers killed her 6-month-old daughter, but also because they represent beauty, life, and birth. The creation of a life full of memories, experiences, opinions, strengths, and weaknesses. Those dolls that Susan sees in the theater after Liz dies, it's symbolic of imagery associated with babies terrifying her. They're covered in blood and given creepy proportions, sure, but they're still terrifying to Susan. Furthermore, flowers, symbols of beauty, also scare Susan. The most pretty aspect of natural life, the vibrant colors, revolt her. The vibrancy of life is unpleasing to her, as the world surrounding her is often dull and dreary. This will be my last example because I can just keep going forever, but when Susan was on that dock with the boats, the monster that she stabs in the head with a knife looks to be changing a diaper. Maybe that's me, maybe I just perceive it as that, but take a look and see if that's what it looks like to you guys. And I know I've droned on about this before over and over again, but I also want to talk about what's real and what's not real. It's very confusing and debatable whether the horrifying images Susan sees are actually there. Are they in her head? Remember when Susan returns from the pest control mansion? Mitzi was completely relaxed. They didn't even talk about it. Nothing about it fazed Susan, which is shocking. Was this all just a power fantasy placed in her head? Or is she really an immortal badass destined to kill the parasites? I don't know. This game makes me think, and that's good. It's provocative. I highly, highly recommend that anybody who's a fan of story-driven games buy and play this game. I know it looks like I spoiled all of it, but there's tons of details and conversations that I failed to show. Thanks for watching and sitting through this incredibly long video. This took me way too long to make, and I apologize for the wait. My next video won't go nearly as in-depth, and my next semester of schooling looks to be much less stressful than the last. Take care, everybody, and have a great day.